and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, for wherever it is that you've logged in. It is an absolute pleasure to be with you today. My name is Dr. Julia Ejiogu, and on behalf of the chairman, founder, the management, the staff, and the parents of the Ziba Foundation, we're so delighted to welcome you to today's event. It is the second in the webinar series celebrating our first year anniversary. Now, we are 1 year old, and in this 1 year we've done quite a few things which we will highlight as our event rolls by. But I do want to say to you that if you missed the first event, the recording is available, as will be this one, and we'll be sharing it with all our participants. The theme of today's webinar is the parent, the teacher, and the pandemic. This is an absolute necessity for all parents, all teachers, everyone who takes care of or who is related or even involved remotely or even intensely with anyone who is on the autism spectrum. Our goal today is to ensure that you leave educated, you leave informed, you leave engaged, you leave excited about options that you have, to help support our children, individuals who are on the autism spectrum. And so I would like to go ahead and introduce our guest for today, who will be taking us on this journey. Before I do that, I wonder how many of you have heard of the Ziba Foundation. If you have not, I would encourage you right now to go ahead and look us up while we do this whole virtual world. You're sitting by your computer. So why don't you type in thezibafoundation.com. Our website is right there telling you who we are. We're a nonprofit organization. Our goal is to provide resources that would create access for children to have every form of resource or therapy, education, to be able to live more independent and more successful lives. Our mission is to do all that we can to do this so that they can be more successful, more independent, and live lives that at the end of the day, their parents and their families will know that, at least, they were able to enjoy life in some way or the other. Please go ahead and look us up. We will continue to provide some more information as we go on. So who do we have today? It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Ms. Tommy Abola Odeleye. She's the lead speech language therapist at a multidisciplinary practice in the United Kingdom. She works in clinic, at home, and in schools, assessing pediatrics and adults. She supervises junior speech and language therapists. She delivers the therapeutic interventions and develops home programs. She has continued to expand her practice abroad, and recently is a speech and language pathologist consultant with the Ziba Foundation. This she started since 2019. So I'm going to go ahead right now and have us bring up Tommy right now so she can begin her session with no further ado. Okay, so can we have Tommy, please? Hi, Tommy.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm great, thanks. So I'm going to let you go ahead, okay?
Okay. All right. So before we begin, I'd like us to do a little bit of housekeeping, because I've tried to organize this presentation in an interactive way. And I want us to use Nearpod to do this. So if you're logged in from wherever you are, if you can just follow the steps that I'm about to show you. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'll just walk you through how we're going to do this in an interactive way. So if you go to Google, then type in Nearpod. click on it. And you'll see join a lesson. Students join a lesson. And you can enter the code. And my code here is GNUEC. And then I'd like you to put in your name, so it will take you there. Now I'm just going to go back to Zoom, and perhaps in the chat, if you could all let us know, or let the moderators know, whether you're following me and whether it's fine for me to continue. So the code was GNUEC. I'll type it here just in case. GNUEC. So Dr. Julia, I don't know whether you're monitoring the comments. Am I okay to carry on?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
But I'd like us to, if you don't mind, let's repeat the instructions one more time,
sure.
just to make sure everyone's on there. If you can just start. I was trying to even type it for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. What I'll do is I will exit this and I'll walk you through it again. So if you go to Google, type in Nearpod, it will take you to nearpod.com. That's Nearpod. Go to students, enter a code, GNUEC. Join the lesson. Yours might look a little different from mine because I'm using the app. And then enter in your name at the top. Once you've done that, join the session. Just like that. And once you've joined the session, my slideshow should show up on your device, just like it's showing here. Is that working for everyone? I hope everyone can see that.
So I'm going to look out for questions from anyone and I'll let you know, but I think so far we should be fine.
Okay. Should I give everyone maybe a minute?
Yes. I'm also wondering if there's a way we can also share your screen from Zoom.
Okay, let me try and do that now while everyone's logging on.
Yeah, while we're logging on. That would be a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that looks good.
Sorry, I'm just trying to join
Okay.
on my laptop and I'm not able to. Am I able to join on two devices, my iPad and my laptop at the same time?
Probably not, but we can just go ahead and use the nearpod.com and go ahead and do that at this time. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. What I might do is sign in as a guest as well here.
Okay.
So that you can see my screen and share my screen that way.
For those of us who are joining and getting ready, we're so glad that you joined us this morning. This is the second in the webinar series to celebrate the Ziba Foundation anniversary. The theme of the event is the parent, the teacher, and the pandemic, all focused on children and individuals on the autism spectrum. Our guest today and our facilitator today is Miss Tommy Abola Odeleye. She's a specialist speech and language therapist all the way from the UK, and the topic today would be explaining abstract concepts to children on the spectrum. And we're so glad you joined us. So why don't you go ahead, Tommy?
Sure, I'll go ahead. So, sorry. Right, what are concepts? If you and I had the pleasure of meeting when I was at the Ziba Foundation earlier on in February, we would have discussed a little bit about concepts. They are the basic understanding of words and concepts. It's hard to define concepts without using that word, that aid children in understanding and increasing their vocabulary. So we can call them the big ideas that children learn as they engage in a range of experiences. And I'll give you an example. We can see here this child is drinking some milk. As the baby grows older, they'll start to experience lots of different liquids, not just milk, water, juice, liquids that can't be drunk, bleach, swimming pool water. And their understanding of the word liquid will grow and expand, and the concept of liquid will expand further till the point where they're in school and they're learning the difference between solids, liquids, and gases. This is a concept, the concept of a liquid, and it can develop and it grows with the child's ability to reason and understand how different concepts link together. So learning a new concept, whether it's the understanding of the word liquids, shapes, colors, themes, are really important in helping a child to understand what's being said. If they don't understand concepts, then it will be really tricky for them to really be able to follow an instruction, to be able to understand the simple things that you're saying to them. And they are the building blocks of early education. So children who struggle to understand basic concepts, like most of our children can do at times, do struggle then to understand simple instructions or differentiate, make choices, and understand details that we can give them in conversations. Okay, so now let's see if you've taken anything on board. I'd like you to give me 3 examples of basic concepts. So here, you need to write your example below and submit them to me. So everything you write, I'm showing you the screen the way that you will see it on your devices if you're logged in. You could share your thoughts and give me an example of a basic concept that your child may know, whether it be liquids, it could be something like colors. I'd like the rest of you, everyone who's tuned in, thank you. We've got shapes. Anyone else like to post some others? Have a think. What is a basic concept? Food? Eating, drinking? Excellent. Give you 10 more seconds. Any more? Okay. Well, these are all great examples of the basic concepts. Here are a few more. We've got size, big, little, prepositions, in, on, under, place, places, colors, numbers, temperature, feelings, textures, hard and soft. When we talk to our children, we're like, oh, be careful, do it softly, don't bang it so hard. We forget that these are concepts that they need to understand. Vehicles. A lot of our children are really into trains or buses or bikes. These are all part of the concept of vehicles. There are other concepts like direction, location, position, quantity, sequence, attributes. These are all basic concepts that children learn very early on. And the ones that I've got here on the board, as speech and language therapists, we expect that children really need to know all of these concepts before starting school in order to understand all the instructions and all the teaching frameworks that they will be given at school. If your child struggles to understand any of these concepts, then they might have difficulty keeping up with the pace of teaching at school. Okay, so what skills are needed to comprehend basic concepts? Well, a child needs good hearing to be able to hear them, but obviously children who are hearing impaired or deaf do still understand basic concepts, they just need to be taught differently. But that's why it's very important, if you do have a child who has got hearing, to make sure that their hearing isn't impeded in any way. It could be fluctuating hearing loss, it could be some sort of a mild hearing impairment. That needs to be addressed properly first, to make sure that the child is hearing you accurately and consistently repeat those basic concepts in order to be able to link every time you say water with the concept of water, or every time you say a shape with the shape that's in front of them. It would be very difficult for them to build an understanding of a concept if every time they hear the word circle, they're hearing it differently. So one day it's circle, the other day it's Urkel, next day it's sir, and they're missing out on the sounds that are important. So we need to make sure that our children's hearing tests are up to date. Then attention and concentration. It takes a lot of time for some children to learn basic concepts. And if they don't have great attention and concentration skills, they're not going to be able to focus for the amount of time that we need to teach them those concepts. So as the building blocks to teaching them concepts, we need to build up their attention and concentration. We need to make sure that we can... Sorry, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen just to make sure. So sorry. You can hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you.
I might just close this door because I do think it's a little noisy there. Sorry. Is that better?
Yes, this is better.
Okay. Play
Knowledge.
skills. Now, play skills is a very important part and a very important building block before we start thinking about them understanding these basic concepts, because we need them to be able to engage in a play sequence so that we can teach them the concepts. When we're teaching a child colours or shapes or numbers, it's normally through play, counting things, singing songs, doing back and forth activities, jumping downstairs and counting those. It's really important that a child is able to engage in that reciprocal play so that you can teach that concept and you can make it enjoyable for your child. And then finally, we get to the understanding of language. Yes, a child does need to be able to understand language to learn concepts. But as you can see, that there are many steps that come before that that are more important to understanding basic concepts than your child having a really good understanding of language. The understanding needs to be there, but we can build that up later. Okay. So what activities can we use to help improve concept development? And we're talking about the basic concepts to start with. Reading books, following instructions. So you could have an instruction of go and give daddy the phone, bring mummy the spoon. Let's feed the big bear. Now here we're introducing a concept, big as opposed to small. Drive your car under the table. Put mummy's phone in the bag. Those are concepts that you're starting to build up with the child. So yes, maybe they may know normally where daddy keeps his shoes, but don't give them an instruction that is just common sense and doesn't involve any understanding of concepts. Try and give them an instruction that involves them understanding a concept. So instead of saying, give daddy his shoes, maybe say, put daddy's shoes in the basket. Now are they really understanding the concept? Now we can understand what part of the sentence do they get, whether they're still struggling with the concept. Playing games, hide and seek, find their favorite toy, put it somewhere. It's under the chair, it's under the bed, it's under mummy, it's under daddy, it's under the teddy. That's how you build their understanding of the concept under. Singing songs, and there are lots of nursery rhymes, lots of songs on YouTube that will give you lots of repetition of the concept word and a lot of visuals that go with it for them to understand what that concept means. Teaching colours. You can put things together, group things by colour. Do a little treasure hunt around the house, finding all the red items in the house. Washing dishes, lots of simple everyday tasks can be made into an activity to help improve concept development. Okay, so this one is for the parents. I'm sorry it's come out a little bit, sorry. I'm sorry it's come out like that. But what I'd like you as parents to do is to identify what basic concept does your child need to learn. If you've got a device, a phone, maybe you could screenshot this, or you can highlight on the next page which concepts you think your child needs to learn. So these ones are the more simple concepts, and if your child is of a more advanced nature, then maybe have a look at this page. We've got spatial concepts, directional, numerical, shapes, temporal, cooperative concepts, descriptive concepts. Think of where your child is at now and ask yourself, what is the next step? What do they next need? Got an activity here. It's just, okay. I'm going to ask you to think of what concepts your child needs to develop next. So on your screen, read through the concepts here. We've got about 30 seconds, and just select the one that you think your child needs, and then press submit. Think about what they already have, and what's the next step that you would like them to learn? What concepts would you like them to learn next? Now we've got 5 seconds. If you could try and select, maybe I should have given you a little bit more time. I might go back and let you do that again and have a little bit more time for it. And just give me a moment, sorry. Technology is being a little bit slow today. Okay. You've got about 30 seconds, please. You've not got long left, 14 seconds. Can you try and put in your answers if possible, please? I can see some of you have done it. Okay, let's look at and see. We have some people who selected. Sorry, I'm just trying to share my screen. It's just taking a little longer. Some people put their answers a little bit late. I'm just going to give them a chance to submit it. Could you all try again, please? Just submit your answers. If you've already got it, just press submit. If you try to submit a little bit later, try it again, please, now. Okay. So we can see that some of you felt like temporal, that's time-based concepts were important as the next step. Some of you thought categorical, a lot on numerical, spatial, and there were some of you that perhaps are not logged in on Nearpod right now, who haven't been able to answer. I will say, for those of you who've joined a little bit after the initial explanation, if you go onto nearpod.com and join with the code that's at the top right-hand side of the screen, GNUEC, you'll be able to log in and contribute interactively into this presentation. Okay. Well, now that we know what you think are the next steps for your child, let's have a look at developmentally whether you were right. So the first step, and typically when we're teaching basic concepts, we like to go in developmental order. What order children typically pick up concepts in. So we can see at first, we've got simple spatial directions, such as in and on. And then directional terms, up and down, prepositions, in, on, and under. So if you picked a different concept and your child does not yet know that, then maybe it might be good for you to think about going back a little bit and working on those concepts first. Okay, the next step, 2 to 3 years, we can see that they're looking at number concepts of 1 and 2, big and little, off, on, under, out of, together, away, starting to have an emergent understanding of time, soon, later, and wait. Objects that are not the same, so things like same and different. And as you can see, you can move down the list and see how the concepts are beginning to become a little bit more complex. Okay. What I would caution and advise parents is that there may be concepts that you would really like them to understand, but try and go developmentally, try and work on the ones that come first, as they will serve as the foundation for your child's understanding. If you teach them a concept out of context, which is very possible to do, they may lack the understanding to fully use that concept and fully understand it if there are earlier concepts that they have not yet understood. Okay. But what about the more abstract or complex concepts? That's what this presentation is supposed to be about. Why have I been talking about all the basics? Well, the basics are important first, because if a child does not understand some of the basic concepts, it makes it much more difficult to use that language to explain an abstract or a complex concept. So we're going to do a little test now, which is a complex or abstract concept. Algebra, toileting, illness. What would you guess? Perhaps we can have a little bit of audience participation right now. I'm going to go back to Zoom and see if in the comment section, because not everyone is logged into Nearpod, you might be able to put your answers down. Algebra, toileting, or illness. Which one do you think is the abstract or complex concept? I'll give you a hint, only one of them is right. So in the chat, I can see algebra. Okay, so someone went for algebra. I'll just go back to another one. Another person said algebra. I'll just go back to Nearpod. It's actually not algebra. The complex concept is illness. Now, why is it illness? Abstract concepts, they vary in terms of their meaning and applicability. What it is, essentially, is something that you cannot feel, touch, or see. It's something that's quite hard to define concretely, such as showing someone a noun. This is a phone. It's in form of telecommunication. It's very easy to define this as a concept. When we think about abstract concepts such as love, sickness, other emotions, they're much harder to explain to a child who is all about the here and now, visual representations, and very concrete things. And some of the features of autism can make it really hard to understand abstract concepts. For instance, many children might have language delays, or they struggle with subtle cues that can help them to pick up meaning from the context. With that being said, some of you may have children who are nonverbal and might think, how will they ever understand these concepts? Just because their spoken language is not as clear or not as defined or not as developed as we would like it to be, does not mean that they are incapable of understanding in greater depth than they can show us verbally. So we do still need to work on things like abstract concepts. And I think the abstract concept that most parents worry about but don't realize is an abstract concept is the concept of danger. We have a lot of children who are impulsive, a lot of children who have sensory needs that cause them to stim or pace or sometimes run off. And it may not be running away, but it could just be extending or giving into that emotional response or that physical need to run and release that energy. We have children who love to climb and seem to climb without any fear of danger or falling, or children who have no concept of heat, hot things, and the danger that it can bring, or dangerous elements, bleach and those things. So parents of children with autism and with a lesser understanding of danger and dangerous concepts, they have to be very hypervigilant. And a lot of them wish that their child could understand that concept a little bit more in order to protect themselves and in order to be able to be a bit more independent in whichever situation or whichever environment they're in. So, is it truly realistic that we can explain something like danger to a non-verbal child with autism? Well, right now, I'm going to show you a video of I believe he's a neuroscientist, explaining what a connectome is to a child. So,
my name's Bobby Kessler.
you might have an advert playing on yours, like I do on mine.
What the connectome is it's a kind of a newly made up term.
Can you hear it?
Not very well, Tommy. I think you should raise the volume as high as you can.
To trace,
Okay.
to recognize things in brain.
My name is Bobby Casturi. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Chicago. I'm a neuroscientist at Argonne National Labs.
Because we're talking about science.
Okay, can you all hear?
Yes, I think audio's good now.
Okay.
Everyone can hear, hopefully. Okay. Tell me, I don't believe they can hear it.
Oh, you
The
can't
audio's,
hear?
yeah, the audio's gone off.
And so what the connectome is we'd like to...
Okay, there we go. There's the audio.
Okay, you can hear it now?
Well, it came on shortly after, so maybe if you can take it back and then just let it roll.
Try to map the brain.
Yeah, now we can
at a
hear it.
scale that's never
Okay.
been mapped before. Every person here can leave with understanding it at some level.
Do you know why we're here today?
Because we're talking about science.
Yes, we're going to talk about science, and we're going to talk about a very specific kind of science about people who study brains. Do you know what a brain is? What is it?
And something that helps you remember things.
Definitely. So what we're going to talk about is something that people study in the brain called the connectome.
Oh.
Do you know that your body is made up of really tiny things called cells?
Yes, I know that.
Okay, well there's more cells in your brain, like way more cells than all the stars we can see. And so what the connectome is we'd like to know where every cell in your brain is and how it talks to every other cell in your brain. That was awesome, Dana. Thank you.
Okay. So as we saw that neuroscientist explaining quite an advanced concept of the connectome to a 5-year-old. If he can do that, then I think that we can explain danger to our non-verbal children. It's not easy, And we're going to go through the steps through which we can do that. So, explicit instruction. We know that our students tend to benefit from explicit or very clear and direct instructions. So rather than just picking up on the concept gradually or subtly or environmentally like some other typically developing children do, we need to teach them outright. So let's say it's fairness. We're going to be learning about fairness. Now, they don't need to understand the word fairness to begin with, but they eventually will. We need to be direct about what makes it different. So we could say it's not something you can see, it's not something you can touch, it's not something you can hold. You have to understand it in your minds. And with this direct teaching, we're going to be very visual in how we speak. We're also going to make sure that the words that we use are short and to the point. It may still be a bit fuzzy, and that's why it's not just focused on us telling them something that we're expecting them to hear. There are many other parts to explaining or to teaching abstract concepts. Now, visual methods. Any of you that have spoken with me or that have had a one-to-one with me know that I'm big on visual methods, big on visual timetables, big on visual cues, big on using visuals to support your child's speech if they have it, and acquisition of speech if they don't. So because many children with autism are visual learners, they learn more readily if they can attach meaning to the pictures that they see or the visual input that they have. So it can be hard for us to find ways to visualize abstract concepts. It will make the difference to your children. So for example, when coronavirus hit and the children were no longer going to school, how did they understand what was happening? This is now suddenly a huge change in the routine. They're used to going to school Monday to Friday and having a summer break, but all of a sudden, we're not doing that. We're talking to teachers on Zoom. What's going on? If you had already had a system of a visual timetable, we're in this timetable at the beginning, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to share my whiteboard just to show you how easy it is to come up with your own visual timetable. So you have a child at home. This is one corner of their room. This is the plain wall. And we're now going to set up a structure for them to understand what is happening day by day. Now, for any parent who had a more successful time explaining this concept during coronavirus, it's because they probably had a system that their child understood to begin with. And now they were only introducing one new element of, we're taking the school off down from the system and we're replacing it with something else. So what does the system look like? Well, you may have small photographs, or if your child prefers images, cartoon pictures, or photos of other people, whichever one works for your child. You will know your child and know whether they like to see pictures of themselves, whether they prefer more cartoon images, or whether they prefer pictures or photographs of others. You may have a picture of them brushing their teeth in the morning. You can also even just draw them yourself the way I'm doing it now. Then you might have a picture of their school uniform. They're putting that on and what they're wearing. Now you might have a picture of the school. It might be better to have a proper picture of the school here so it's easily recognizable and it's not just a building that they don't know. Then afterwards it might be get picked up in the car, and who's picking you up today? Is it mummy? Is it daddy? Is it your nanny? Who is it? So a picture of whoever it is that's in the car, the mode of transport that you're using, and the person. This might change day to day. Sometimes it might be mum. Sometimes it might be dad, let's just say. Then afterwards, what are they doing after school? Is it homework at home? Then you might have a picture of home. Is it going to the supermarket? You might have a picture of the supermarket instead. Those things may change on a daily basis, and your child will get used to the system of things in order to understand what's happening during their day. Now, when we're teaching a concept that they don't know, an abstract or complex concept such as the fact that they're not going to school because of coronavirus and because there's an illness, then we need to add in a new element to their timetable. So instead of having school, we might put a cross, or we might just remove it depending on your child and what's more visually meaningful to them. Instead of school, we might have a picture now of them on their iPad talking to their teacher. So although, yes, they don't yet understand what coronavirus is and the fact that everyone is social distancing and that they're learning remotely, they are now starting to understand the concept behind what is happening to them. So that's the visual methods, and that's the early stages of how we start to build up an understanding of the concept. Think back to that child, that baby that was drinking milk at the beginning. At first, all they know is milk. And later on, when we start to understand, or you ask a 15-year-old what a liquid is, the amount of information they can tell you and the concept knowledge they have around that is vastly different. But we have to start somewhere. So that's why having those visual timetables, having the visuals there, even if your child is very verbal and you can explain it to them, what it does is it ensures that they really understand every aspect of the concept. We have a lot of children who are visual and can say things that we know they don't truly understand. They say it in context, but if you ask them to clearly explain to you what that means, they can't. So don't feel like you're not challenging your child if you're doing this step. What it's doing is it's making sure there are no gaps in their foundation or understanding. Okay, now I'll go back to showing my screen. So after visual methods, tactile methods. Some of our children benefit from incorporating tactile methods or things that they can touch and manipulate into their learning. So for these students, it's really important for us to provide opportunities to build sculptures, use their bodies, reenact scenes, and ideas associated with the abstract concepts that they're working on. So let's talk danger. Maybe our child is fond of going into the kitchen and we're worried that one day they might burn themselves, hurt themselves, touch things that are sharp, those sorts of things. Now, these are all very tactile feelings that we want the child to understand when we say, it's hot, it's going to burn you. What does that mean? What's the abstract concept there? Okay, well, we can go through things of differing. You can get 3 different tubs of water. One is ice cold with ice in it, one is lukewarm, and one is moderately warm, but not that will burn your child, but warm, to teach them the concept. Then we can just have a whole fun time with ducks or with any toys that they like, throwing them in and out of the water. First in the cold one, then in the warm one, and then in the hot one, whichever one it is. You're working tactilely, that's with things that they can touch and manipulate and feel sensorily, to teach them that concept. So then later on, when you're in the kitchen, you say that's hot, they understand, oh, that was the one that didn't feel so good when I was playing. That's the one I didn't really want to put the ducks in or get out of because it was hot. They understand that concept, they understand what burn means, and you work on it from the beginning, but you start to have quite a set and a thought out procedure or method to how you're going to teach these more difficult concepts. So now we're going to look at how we're going to incorporate it into our routines. We know that our students benefit from routine and repetition, so it's best as possible we want to capitalize on this as we teach abstract concepts. If we live, and our lives can sometimes be a little bit haphazard, a little bit spontaneous, we know it happens to all of us. But if we create as much routine as possible, when we are teaching our child something new, that new thing stands out from the rest of the things that they are used to. And this is therefore much easier to learn. Just the same way as if we were going to learn, let's say, Mandarin. It's much easier for us to learn Mandarin when it's taught by an English-speaking teacher who teaches you one new Mandarin word at a time. If we were to reverse that and have a Mandarin-speaking teacher who taught the whole lesson in Mandarin, and you had to pick up the information and the new keywords in the context of the instructions being in Mandarin, that would be really difficult and not something that most of us could do. We need the new information to stand out, and that means that we keep the rest of the information the same and consistent. So that's what we do verbally. What about with our routine during the day? Choose a consistent time each day to return to the same concept. So remember, we're looking at routine. You don't want to be teaching lots of different concepts at the same time. Pick on 1 or 2 concepts at the most, and choose a consistent time each day to return to that concept. Make it a routine. Teach explicitly about the concept, and engage the child in an activity. So think hard about what kind of activity works well for your child, whether it's a visual one, whether it's a tactile one, whether it's a sensory activity. How do we teach that concept through those methods? And then how do we reflect on that? And yes, it's easier with verbal children who can talk to you about what they've just done or explain what they've learned. But with our non-verbal children, how do we get them to show what they understand? We really need to think about it. And this might be a time where we look at it more on an individual basis, and you can liaise with your therapist to look at how do we get them to feed back what they're doing. Okay. Last thing, scripts and social stories. So we know that it can be hard for students to understand a concept like equality, like being fair, like taking turns. And that's when social stories come in. And with that, yes, you do need to have a high level of understanding. You do need to be able to follow a sequence of instructions and to be able to follow a story. But it doesn't need to be very complicated. The example I'm going to give, yes, is aimed at children who are a little bit more verbal and have a good understanding of language. But there are ways of adapting it to make it very easy for our non-verbal children who are not yet at that language level. I'm going to play this video now.
We Wear Masks, a social story by Mr. Mike. We Wear Masks, a social story by Mr. Mike. When I go to the doctor's office or the hospital, I see people wearing masks. Now I see people wearing masks outside and in the store. Everyone is wearing masks because people are getting sick from a virus called COVID-19. The best way to stay safe is by staying inside my home. That's why I can't go to school right now. If I have to go outside, I need to wear a mask too. It's also very important to stay 6 feet away from other people. If I don't have a mask, I can use a scarf or a bandana. Anything that covers my mouth and nose will work. The mask feels funny on my face, but it's important for me to stay safe. We can all wear masks together.
Okay.
The end.
So we can see, before we get into the quiz, we can see how that was a quite, sorry. We can see that was quite a straightforward story about wearing masks and the impacts of coronavirus and why we need to wear masks. Yes, A child with good language will be able to understand that and understand what they need to do. And it's really important that we play those sorts of social stories regularly. I would recommend playing them before bedtime every night. But for the children that we think, oh, they wouldn't be able to understand that, well, would they or would they not? Because if you've introduced a consistent system where they are familiar with the pictures, where they're familiar with the icons or the symbols that are used in the story, then I would imagine that most children who, even if they didn't understand the language, would be able to understand the new elements of the story, the new pictures, and how that fits in with what they already know. So when they saw the picture of them at school and saw the arrow across the picture of them at school and saw them at home instead, they would understand that that's linked to whatever it is that's new, which is the wearing of the masks. So there are ways that we can start to educate our children about these concepts from a very, very early age and from very little language ability to a point where they're starting to understand some of these more difficult concepts. So what we're going to do now is a little quiz to see how much you've retained when it comes to how do we teach more complex concepts to children who are on the spectrum. I'm going to share my screen again, and it's going to be back in Nearpod. If you can, log into nearpod.com, go to students and put in the code GNUEC. That will take you to this quiz. So for those of you who were there, could we start off with question 1? Start filling in your quizzes, please. And once you've done the first question, you can scroll to the next. So the first question, for those of you who aren't logged into Nearpod, incorporating strategies is a good way to help students with autism access abstract concepts. For those of you on Zoom, do you want to write your answers down, and I'll take the majority answer and put it into mine. Is it in the chat? The question is, incorporating what strategies is a good way to help students with autism access abstract concepts? Or perhaps, could I have the sound on for parents so that they can shout out their answers and I can put some in?
If you look at the chat, I think we have one answer, visual.
Sorry. Do you mind telling me, sorry, because I have to go back and out visual, okay?
Yeah, we have visual there.
Thank you. So question 2, what challenge associated with autism can make learning abstract concepts especially difficult? What challenge associated with autism can make learning abstract concepts especially difficult? Do you have any answers?
Sensory.
Sensory? Okay. Which of the following teaching abstract concepts to students with autism? Students with autism may need explicit teaching to understand abstract concepts. Students with autism already understand abstract concepts. Students with autism cannot learn abstract concepts. Or D, students with autism will struggle so much to understand abstract concepts that it's not worth trying. Which of the following is true?
I have an answer here. I see A.
A. Okay. What social story might you use for teaching abstract concepts to students with autism? So what social story might you use for teaching abstract concepts to students with autism? So the question here is really asking, well, I won't help you. What answers do we have?
Anyone? Fairness.
Okay. And last one, which of the following is an example of an abstract concept?
Someone says justice.
Okay, thank you. I need to give everyone at home about 30 seconds to finish. I think most people have. So I'll share it. We scored 4 out of 5 collectively here. So let's go through the answers. Incorporating visual strategies is a really good way to help students with autism access abstract concepts. The more visual we can make things, the more concrete it becomes. So remember, abstract concepts are things that they can't see, touch, or feel. They have no reference for. If we link it with something visual, it becomes more of a semi-abstract concept, something that they can start to understand in a concrete way. What challenge associated with autism can make learning abstract concepts especially difficult? Language delays. If a child has a language delay, it's harder for us to explain the concept. So definitely language delays are the biggest challenge. Definitely sensory overstimulation, because it makes it hard for them to concentrate, focus, and it makes it hard for them to concentrate and focus on the instruction. It may make it hard for us to teach in certain ways because they might be too stimulated by our teaching methods, but language is the biggest factor. Which of the following is true about teaching abstract concepts to students with autism? Definitely the first one. Some may need explicit teaching to understand abstract concepts. Okay. What social story might you use? Fairness and friendship. The others are all good. We can make social stories about the others, but we wouldn't be teaching an abstract concept. Fairness is something they can't see, touch, or feel. And that's the abstract concept that we would be teaching if we were using a social story to teach that. Going to a party, they're trying new foods, stopping a tantrum, they're all quite concrete and simple, basic concepts. And then finally, which of the following is an example of an abstract concept? Justice, definitely. Although things like multiplication are hard, they're just multi-level basic concepts, to be honest. They're not something that they can't see, touch, feel, or experience in that way. Okay, so just in summary, teaching students to think abstractly, especially when they have autism, can be challenging, but it's also very rewarding. We have to think about what concepts are most relevant to your child or student's life, and that can be accessed or taught in spite of any language delays that they might have. We have to think kind of, more flexibly as parents or as specialists, and think about how we're going to teach it and the challenges that we need to avoid. We need to be explicit and give very clear, simple, short instructions. We need to incorporate visuals and tactile activities. And then we need to do it within a routine so that this new concept is the only thing that is new and is the thing that stands out to the child, which will help them to understand that concept. Social stories and scripts are always really good, and they become quite a nice part of a bedtime routine if you can involve them in your teaching. So that is my quick fire overview of how to teach abstract concepts to children on the spectrum, especially in times like this when we're doing a lot of remote learning. I hope that has been useful to you all and that you've all come away learning something from that.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so, so much. It was so good. And I loved especially how interactive it was. I think all of us are like, wow, you can actually, there's more virtual learning, you know, that you can do with using Neopod, and it's definitely been very helpful. Thank you. So moving on, we are going to take a little break. So please don't go away because our Q&A session comes up. I know you have a lot of questions to ask. Ms. Tommy is a speech and language therapist. Like I mentioned, she does a lot of home assessments. She does, you know, all ages pretty much, and she is available to answer all your questions. I do have one question that's already been typed in the chat. Please use the chat to document your questions today. And you can actually even speak, I believe, if you're unable to type the question. So please don't go away because we have some messages at this time. Okay, so if you just hold on, the Q&A session promises to be really, really interesting. Thank you. So over to the IT team.
As an ambassador for the Zebra Foundation, I want to wish them a huge congratulations on their 1-year anniversary. I am so proud as DJ Cuppy to be part of their amazing initiative, helping children along the autism spectrum. I personally have been able to visit their center in Abuja, and I'm so proud of what they're doing, but I know there's more work to do. So many children across the country, Nigeria, are affected by autism. And this is a place they can go for help, for advice, and for support, and feel part of a community. I personally have a brother, Fewa, who's part of the autism spectrum, and I know how important it is to just have that support and that information. So I want to thank the Zebra Foundation team and the founder as well, and the amazing staff and consultants and support system behind them. Thank you so much, and I pray that there's many more years to come. Congratulations.
Okay, so if you could start my video, I think you stopped my video, but as long as you can hear me, everyone, thank you for still being around. We're so grateful that you're still with us. And thank you so much. There we go. Perfect. Technology. It's working. We're doing a good job so far. Okay, so here we go with our very first question that we have from, and this is from, let me just go right back here and make sure I get all the names correctly. So this is from Mrs. Alenda Giwa Amu, and she asks a very vital question. She says, how do you handle an assertive 2-year-old?
Oh, an assertive 2-year-old, wonderful to have. What you need to do is you need to write down a list of all the behaviors that you perhaps are struggling with. And then you need to decide which ones are your non-negotiable, that's in your table in red, and which ones are the ones that we'll work on that later. But the non-negotiable ones are the key ones. And maybe it will be 3 rules that you don't want your child to do, or that you find that you are constantly back and forth negotiating, arguing, trying to battle with that 2-year-old. Now at 2, yes, they're young, but they do understand quite a lot, and for him to be, or her to be assertive, then they have a concept of what they want and can make a choice. So I think it's about giving them now the choice that you are happy with. So perhaps you want them to go to bed and bedtime is always a struggle. Instead of making it a fight about do they go to bed or do they not, are they just playing around and they're not following any instructions, we can give them the choice of, are you going to go to bed straight away, or are we going to read a story, then go to bed? And that can be their option. At the end of the day, we still arrive at the end result that you want, but we may not do it exactly the most linear way, and we give them a little bit of control in being able to choose an activity that they do first. We know that for a lot of children, they struggle with control, and they struggle with being quite difficult, or being quite ways that we might think are difficult, or doing things that we might feel are oppositional. And we have to think about it from their perspective. If we don't have the language to explain what we want, for example, one of my students, the parents were talking to me about the fact that they're always absconding and running out of the house, and how it's become a real danger. Absolutely, it is a danger. But the reason why the child runs out of the house like that is because that little boy doesn't have the language to say, "Mommy, can I go to the park?" or "Mommy, I want to go outside." So in the absence of that language, they can't ask for permission. There is no strategy at home. There is no system to support the child to be able to ask in a way, and therefore wait for that reaction and do it in a way that the parent would be happy with. So as much as sometimes we might struggle with our child's behavior or how difficult they may be, do we give them the option to communicate in a way that their behavior becomes less difficult? So with that child that I was speaking about, the one that would always run outside of the house, end up on streets, 3 streets away from his house, would get into strangers' cars, was very, very impulsive. When they introduced the system of picture exchanges and using the iPad to ask for things, and yes, at the beginning, the parents had to be very lenient and say yes to everything that was asked for, and make sure that they only had pictures out that they could absolutely say yes to and do. The child then learned that if I ask first, I get what I want. And slowly, as that child learns how to ask, then you can withdraw how much they get, and doing everything at a certain time, or giving them more options there. But you can deal with difficult children. It depends on the nature of the difficulty. Obviously, I don't quite know what's difficult about your child, but sometimes it's about giving them an opportunity to express and ask for things, or it's about giving them an option that you are happy with. And some of the other behaviors, yes, you're going to have to ignore it for a while, because it's hard to work on everything at once, and the child just can't take in all that information and change behaviors on every aspect at once. So focus on the things that are most important to you, maybe 2 or 3 areas that you want to change or start to adopt a new method of behaving. Don't struggle with your child back and forth. Give your child an option, teach them through routine, give them the same options each time, and then follow through. If they make a choice, follow through and give it to them. If they don't, show them and choose for them, and then slowly but surely you will teach them the understanding that they need in order to minimize the behaviors that you might be finding quite difficult.
So basically, from what I hear you say, follow through for some of us who the lingo may be a little, would be you make a decision and you do exactly that. So if the child chooses something off the visual schedule, you're going to go with that one choice. You're not going to say, "Oh, but let's try this." You stay consistent with that one decision that you've made, and you go to the very end of it. You chose to go to the park instead of staying home. Okay, park it is. And so you go to the park. So you're consistent all the time. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying.
Okay. So that's follow through. Thank you so much. And so we have 2 questions on our Q&A. Thank you so much, Ms. Henshaw. The first one is, can multiple birth, being a twin, pose a speech challenge to a child of 3+?
It typically shouldn't. I'm a twin myself, and there's no research or studies to show that twin births or multiple births result in speech delay. What there is evidence that early speech development can be a little bit delayed, but by 3, the child should have caught up. What we seem to find with multiple births or twins is that they communicate a lot more non-verbally at the beginning stages, and we're talking 6 to 12 month stage. They have a lot more non-verbal communication, a lot more play-based skills that are developing first, and then the language starts to come a tiny little bit later. But by the time we're measuring language, which is around 2 years old, they have caught up with the rest of their peers, and there is no noticeable difference between children who are of single births or multiple births. So if your child at 3 is still struggling or has a speech delay, I don't know whether both children have the speech delay, then that's something that is unique to them and is not because of them being twins or triplets or whichever the case may be. And we need to kind of get to the bottom of what sort of a language delay it is, and whether it's a disorder, which is when the language is developing in a haphazard way, not the way we would expect. And a delay is just when a child is behind for their age, but it's typically developed the way we would expect. So we might have a 7-year-old speaking like a 3-year-old, whereas a disordered child, a disordered language would be the 7-year-old that has some vocabulary that's like a 10-year-old, some vocabulary that's like a 1-year-old, and some part of their language profile that's like a 7-year-old. So there's a spiky profile there.
Thank you. And just we might add that, you know, if you do have any questions about your child's speech, please feel free to reach out to the Ziba Foundation. We'll put you in contact with our speech and language therapist so you can get an assessment. It's very important that if you're struggling with this, you shouldn't do it on your own, or if you know anyone who has, you know, issues with their child, please direct them to the Ziba Foundation. Thank you. Ms. Henshaw, did you take the second question away? Because I did see your second question. Oh, there we are. How does one handle a child of 3+ who prefers drawing to writing on her worksheet instead of numbers? You see a butterfly.
Okay. I'd like to ask Ms. Henshaw, is your child able to write in his name or her name? I might wait. Because when you say prefers drawing to writing, I think for me to answer it, I'd really need to know what the child's writing skills are, whether they're able to write. I'm not sure if she's able to microphone, and I could ask a few questions. Yeah.
Well, while we're trying to find she's trying to answer that, because I think she'll just probably type it. Okay. Oh, yes, she answers. She says, yes, able to write.
Okay, so if she's able to write, then your child is just showing a preference, the same way we all have a preference, probably. I think an occupational therapist would be able to rule out whether there are any handwriting problems or any difficulties manipulating the pencil or the pen or whatever in a way to sustain writing and to complete the task. But if there aren't any, and if the occupational therapist rules that out, then what we see is a child who just enjoys drawing, enjoys writing butterflies. And maybe what you might need to do is structure the activity. So if there is a piece of writing that you want him to do or her to do, none of that.
I think what she's trying to say, yeah, no problems with grip and all that. Yeah.
So you might have on your piece of paper, what I'll do is use the whiteboard. Say this is their piece of paper. Here, I would have 3 reward boxes. And they need to write a sentence. You need to teach your child and use the same format, the same setup of the piece of paper each time so she understands or he understands what they need to do. They complete the writing task. Maybe you have something that they need to copy up here. The cat, the dog, the bike. And say they do their writing underneath. After they've done their writing, then they get to draw a butterfly. And perhaps you might buy something like butterfly stickers, and you do a sticker and you put it there each time. Then you show them, next they need to do this. So then they do the dog, then they get to draw another butterfly. And you give them a butterfly sticker. Then they do their writing of the bike, and you give them an opportunity to do their drawing of the butterfly. If they don't draw it, if they don't do the writing, and they
don't get the butterfly,
they don't get the butterfly. And you might, if you know that your child is cognitively aware and knows what they have to do, and that's important for this next step before I tell it to you. If you're not sure whether your child truly understands what the task is asking and is refusing, then don't do this. But if you know that your child understands what they need to do and is just choosing not to, after a while, we need to have a cutoff point. So you might say, you ask them to do it, and then you say, okay, 1, 2, 3, okay, the butterfly is gone, no drawing, and you move on to the next one. And you see if they can do it then. All right, that's what I see she said. I thought I saw a comment.
Yeah, she said, okay, right now we are on to perfecting our numbers and letters. So I guess, you know, we would use the same thing. The butterfly would be the reward. And then, you know, the question of whether letters or numbers would be, you know, the task. I believe that's what you're saying.
Absolutely. And you know, you can make the task a little bit more manageable. I'm sure if you go on Amazon, you can find those little pens that have a butterfly on the top. And so she's writing with something that's incentivizing her to do it. And I would only bring that pen out when she's doing a writing task. I wouldn't let her use that pen or him use that pen when they're just free drawing or freestyling. It's for the writing task. It's for the harder task to act as a motivator for your child.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Henshaw. That was a great question. And we have another one from Mr. Nzan Obe. Thank you so much for your question. And it basically says, what does one do if a child perseverates on a subject? Does one encourage that or discourage this? So the word perseverates would be repeating a particular subject over and over, and this you find particularly in kids on the spectrum, where they're so fixated on this one thing they want to talk about. It doesn't matter whatever it is, you're going to bring you straight back to that one topic.
Yes.
It's a great question.
It's a really great question, and that's going to be a child who's obviously got the language skills to hold a conversation or to at least, you know, have a few sentences there. It is something that we do need to work on because it's an important part of their social skills. And if they perseverate on a topic, that means keep going back to it. They won't move on. They don't take the cues of what the topic is about. They always change the topic back to their favorite topic. Let's say it's, I have one child that I was seeing yesterday who perseverates on video games. And no matter what we are talking about, he has a special skill of being able to take the conversation back to video games, and will have the same repetitive conversation with you over and over again. So with that child, because he's more cognitively able, this is what I did with him, and I'll show you. It's a really great program for those of you parents who have children who are more verbally able but have a lot of social skills that need to be pulled up. I would recommend buying this program. It's a tiny little bit expensive, but it's a bit cheaper during the coronavirus, so I would get it now rather than later. I think it's about $100, so it is expensive, but it's got a whole program that's kind of made for you, and you can show your child videos to explain what they're working on as you choose topic by topic what you're going to consider. So let me show you. I'll share my screen. And this is the program. It's called Everyday Speech Social Learning Platform. Now, if we go to conversational skills, sorry, no, it's not in that bit. Let me search for it. Okay, it's called Topic Radar. And it works on different levels. You can see these are the emergent levels, and you can choose a video that's aimed at primary school children or a little bit older secondary school children. So let's look at keeping our friends interested. So what's great about this is it has a video, and it's also got the companion worksheets that you can do at the end. So with your child, you can play
Using our topic radar helps us think about what other people like to talk about. We want to make sure we talk about more than just our favorite topics. This isn't very fun for other people. If we aren't sure what to talk about with others, we can use the topic radar. This helps us remember what we know about others. People like to talk about things you have in common or about things they are interested in.
So I get to this part of the video, and then I would get them to make a table. So they can have me, me. I don't know why it's doing that. Let's just say they have 3 columns, okay? Themselves, maybe their family, and their friends. Hold on, let's go back to Zoom. I would then stop them. I'd get them to do a table of their favorite topics, their family's favorite topics, and their friends' favorite topics. So what we're doing is we're building their awareness. Maybe their favorite topics are video games, a TV program, and food, let's just say. Then I'd get them to ask Daddy, what are his favorite things to talk about? And so they'd write down, Dad likes to talk about this, Mom likes to talk about this, and their sister likes to talk about this. Okay, now your friends. Who do you talk to, or the people in their wider community if they don't have defined friends? And have them relate 3 things. Okay. Now, how often do you talk about this thing that Daddy likes? How often do you talk about this thing that their friends like? And a lot of children will not show very much insight into whether they talk about the things that other people like. So week 1, what we would do is we would have this list up on the table, up on the wall, maybe in the kitchen, somewhere where everyone can access. Every time, and it would be bigger than this, but every time they talk about something that they like with you, you give them a tick. Every time they talk about something you like, you give them a tick. At the end of week 1, you draw their attention to the fact that actually we spent most of our conversations talking about the things that you liked and not much talking about the things that other people like, because you kept talking about the things that you liked. So we now start to get them to understand what we're talking about before we try and change that behavior. I would then go back to, am I sharing my screen? I would then go back to the video.
The skills we use are Think about the other person's interests.
Now they know skill number
Remember
one.
what you know about them. This could be their family members, hobbies, or favorite things. Look for clues in your surroundings.
And now we're going to work on skill number 2. What do you know about them? So if we go back and we think about, this is week 2. We think about the chart that we made the week before, and you keep that chart up at somewhere here next to this chart. And we get them now to fill out week 2's chart. They put their ones. Now, do they remember what mommy likes? Do they remember what daddy likes? Do they remember what their sister likes? They fill it in now without asking. How much have they remembered? How much do they remember about what Johnny else or Femi likes or the others? Okay, now they remember. So each day, mum would add in something new about her day, something that's happened in the here and now. So maybe mommy's not feeling well, and so you can have a picture of mommy, she's looking sad, or she's not feeling well, mommy's sick. So that's a topic that you can also talk about. It's not mommy's favorite topic, but it's a topic for this week. Or maybe daddy's going on a plane, he's going on a trip. So we add in the picture of that. It's an extra topic, it's not daddy's favorite, but it's something that's happening, something that we know about them. Or maybe the sister is going on a swimming to a swimming lesson. We add that in, so it's there, it's a reminder. Now the child's task is to get more ticks in this section than they have in that section. Than they had, sorry, in this section the week before. That's their task. And they get bonus ticks if they talk about the things that are new, the things that are happening right now that are of interest. So we're working on, as you can see, we haven't yet talked about, oh, don't go back to what you like to talk about. We're not really focusing on the things that they like to perseverate on. We are teaching them the skills in order to change that behavior first. Once they've done that, so this might be week 1, week 2 for some children who are quick and pick it up. Some children might take much longer and might need a longer period of time to do that. 3 weeks on week 1, 3 weeks on week 2. Once they've got the hang of that, then we can finally go to the last part. So we would go back, sorry.
Or wearing. Let's see how Julian uses his topic radar.
I got to this new level of my video game last night, and now there are all these weird robots, and they keep making these weird noises.
Yeah, they were telling me about it at lunch.
Yeah, and it's getting really hard, but I think I found their weakness.
Great.
But anyway, how's that book you've been reading?
Oh, it's...
So we showed them the videos like this. This one, I've shown it to you in the middle of the lesson, but there's a video at the beginning where he gets it very wrong and you see it, and it's very, very obvious that he keeps talking about the same topic. Sorry, I'll go back to the Zoom. Okay, you show them that video and you ask him, okay, what's he doing wrong? Now at this point, your child has learned enough about the skills that they need to be able to identify what that child is doing. And if they don't, you can talk them through it. And you can say, oh, keeps talking about video games, oh, and then you can laugh about it and say, is that something you do? And we can look back on their week 1 table where we had all those ticks where he was talking about the same thing again and again and again. We could say, actually, you're getting a bit better at that, and show him week 2, week 3, where they've been talking about different things. And then you give them a challenge and you say, oh, we're going to have a challenge jar now. Maybe just get your chin-chin jar, a glass jar, whichever one, a vase, get a jar like this. And you need 2 jars to do this. and you need to buy a bag of marbles. Every time they change the topic to talk about their topics, you put a marble inside. Every time they talk about topics that you like, you put a marble inside. And this is something that you would work on daily because there's a lot going on and they need that instant reinforcement. So at the end of the day, you see which jar has the most marbles. Is it my topics or is it the topics of the people around me? Now, that would work for some children. For some children, it really doesn't work because they can go the whole day and they don't really care whether that has it. And, you know, at the end of the day, I would, for the children it works with, if they have more marbles in this one, then they get a little reward, whether it's a sticker or 5 minutes more on the iPad or whatever it is that you choose. For the other children who need it in the here and now, who don't even notice that they're doing it, what I do is I have a piece of paper with me at all times. And on the piece of paper, I draw a straight line to show when they're on topic. When they start to go off topic, I draw a little squiggly line. If they keep going off, I show them. When they watch that line and they bring it back to the topic, then I draw a line. And so this is something that could be done at the dinner table or a time when you're doing a tabletop activity together and you're trying to raise your child's awareness of monitoring their own speech and their own language. So you show them, oh yeah, you're on topic. Oh no, you've gone to your topic. Okay, yeah, you're back. Oh, you've gone. And it's a visual representation of what they're doing. And it helps them to connect the action that they're doing in a concrete way to a visual thing. Like we were saying, it's an abstract concept of thinking of staying on topic, and it makes it much more concrete for them to understand, oh, this is what it means to bring my conversation back to the topic. This is what it means for me to stay on track. This is what it means for me not to perseverate. That's how you would work on it, and it is important to work on because there's lots of different ways a child can stim, and a lot of children do verbally stim in that way, and it just keeps them on a loop that it's very hard for them to take in other things when they're so fixated on a topic that's of interest to them. But at the same time, I warn parents to be cautious. You know, it's not every day that we want to boundary our child's speech. Some moments of the day, let them have games talk, or, you know, put it into the schedule. This is the time when we're going to talk only about games. You can tell me everything and I'm not going to stop you. But in these other times of the day, you need to be careful or mindful of what other people like, and make sure that your topics are pleasurable for everybody, not just you.
Oh my gosh, that was so helpful, because verbal behavior is part of what we do at the Zeba Foundation. Our therapists are also, working with you, as you know, Tommy, to help our clients with verbal behavior. And verbal behavior basically is teaching a child the function of words, of sentences, of conversation, you know, through modifying their behavior. And as you notice, when she showed that squiggly line, the child was like, oh, okay, I'm going off topic, because they associate that behavior of repeating with the squiggly line. And so just seeing that, they adjust their behavior. This is something that we use to help our children as well. So please feel free to call us at the Zeba Foundation and get your child assessed and get your child all set up to be helped in that way. Thank you. We're doing really well on time, but we have one question that was sent in prior to this time from some of our therapists. And I think this will be also beneficial to our parents. It talks about how we can work well with our kids during teletherapy sessions. What are some tips? Because this is our new reality. I mean, you know, we would like you to give us some tips in that regard. And also think about the parents when you're doing this too.
I struggled too, I'm not going to lie. It was, you know, there were times when I wanted to jump out of my window when I was doing the teletherapy, because it is tricky. It is very tricky. Even, I'm sure all of us today who've logged into this webinar, there have been times when our attention has waned. There have been times when we've got distracted, come back to it and missed a whole chunk. It's hard to focus on a screen and to hear things in a really inorganic way. But I think what it has highlighted to us is the importance of the building blocks for language, for therapy, for all those things. When I was talking about the play skills and the attention and listening skills, and then also the need for routine. So for parents, what I would say is your role comes in with working on building your child's attention and listening skills. How do you do that? Sand timers. And you start to look at what is the baseline for the amount of time that my child can focus on an activity of my choice, not their choice. Maybe your child might be starting off at 30 seconds. And, you know, it might sound crazy, but really, you know, a lot of children are at that level of 30 seconds, you've got their attention, then they're off, or they're moving somewhere else, or you've lost them without having to bring them back to the activity. So we want to start moving that from 30 seconds to a little bit longer. How do you do that? Well, you can use lots of sensory toys, bubbles, music, whatever it is that they like, ready, steady, go, to start to stretch their ability to focus for longer periods of time. When you've got a child who can focus for, and I like to say, for us to be able to really work on something, 2 minutes, we need to get your child to about 2 minutes worth of concentration to be able to work remotely effectively. Otherwise, and I will come back to that, the therapist will be using you in the room to be doing a lot more. But if you want it to be directly with the therapist across the camera, then your child's attention needs to be really around 2 minutes to be able to complete a learning segment. So parents, it's increasing the attention span, and it's also building a routine. It's your child being able to understand that right now, this is not playtime, this is learning time. And they'll only do that, or they'll only know if you've set up a schedule for them. So they need the visual timetable, they need the routine, and you can practice this on days when you don't have a therapy time. You can have your husband who's at the office zooming in, and have the child engage with your husband and sit in a spot and know that, oh no, we're sitting at the table, oh no, back at the table, oh, every time they get up, put them back there. Every time the Zoom comes up, they need to stay for just those 2 minutes, the 2 minutes that we know that they can understand and that they can focus for. And we build it into their routine. It might be just after they've had breakfast, when they're bright, when they're focused, when they're not, you know, too distracted or too restless, we can get that done. So you build your child up to expect a FaceTime call or a Zoom call from someone, and change the people who it is. And make it an engaging activity where they're just, you know, playing games, making faces, moving around, bubbles, seeing fun things, drawing on the screen, copying each other, that sort of thing. If you get them to be able to engage with that every single day and in the routine of that for 2 minutes, and then slowly, we're building it for longer. So now it's 3 minutes, now it's 5 minutes, now it's 4 minutes. That's how you prepare your child to be able to cope with that. And you might think, oh, it's going to take forever. It does not take forever. It really doesn't. If you do it daily, in the next, we've got 4 weeks until school is back properly. Here in the UK at least. We've got 4 weeks until school is back full time. So you've got that time to really build up to quite a long level, maybe 5 minutes by that time, if you do these things and put that structure in place for your child. So now, what role do the therapists have? I think as therapists, we need to be quite realistic with ourselves. What do we need to teach and what is important? Right now, we're using our parents a lot as our help, as our aid, as our reporters, as our TAs. They are our everything right now. So we need to look at what are the parents going to be motivated to work on? What issues are they having at home? It may not be what you were working on when you were at the Zebra Foundation, when you're in the classroom, when you're working with a curriculum and you're doing things. You might need to change your targets for now, because the parents are going to put in more effort to the things that benefit them and make their lives easier and bring their child more joy at home than the things that they can't see. So I had to change, personally, I had to change a lot of my targets to work with the children. So all the children I was doing all these amazing social communication programs with at school, these lunchtime clubs, all this stuff, I couldn't do that anymore. The parents were worried because they were playing too many video games, or they were fighting with their sisters, they were shouting, they were getting bored all the time. They didn't know how to engage them. And so I had to change my targets to suit the needs of the child in that moment. Then I started to look at, okay, parents, I know you're struggling right now, and you're starting to see things that perhaps you weren't picking up on when you weren't at home with your child for those 8 hours a day that they're at school. What things have you noticed? What gaps are there in their foundation skills that we need to address? What instructions are they struggling to follow that you're worried about, or that you think, oh, I didn't realize that they didn't understand the meaning of this? That's the things that I was now starting to, so the first week I had the parents write down everything that they struggled with, all the things that were driving them crazy while they were at home. And then I said, okay, we had a meeting with the parents and we said, let's pick out the things that are developmentally lacking. So the child can do a lot of things that are more advanced, but these areas are what are holding them down when it comes to their understanding, or holding them down when it comes to their expressive language, or holding them back when it comes to their social interaction. Let's work on those things that are pulling their ability to progress backwards. And then, yes, definitely more parent-driven targets are helpful. Then we would look at, how do we implement them in the home environment? What does the parent have? And I looked at it as an opportunity to build up a set of resources that the parents would use. A lot of the time we talk about how, oh, we're only seeing them 1 hour a week or 1 hour a day. It's not going to make a world of a difference. But we've got the opportunity now to get the parents to build in a routine where they are following through with the strategies that we recommend. Is, you know, an amazing opportunity that we have as therapists to do that. So are we getting the parents to create visuals? Are we setting them up each week with a manageable task of what to do? So for some of my parents, I got them to create, for the non-verbal children, to take pictures of all the things that their child likes, so that the child is now able to start making choices. Take pictures and get little mini toys or objects of reference, whichever worked well for their child. Then to also set up their devices that have them. So make sure that you have a folder in your photos where the child can swipe through and show you what they want. Play games with them. So maybe you might start off with that folder and it only has 2 options. And the child is encouraged every day to either swipe through, or if you've got it in the home on the wall, to show you the picture of what they want. And each day you can make it something really motivating at the beginning to get the child to understand what's happening. It could be going to get ice cream or going to get suya. And you show them the picture of the 2 things, the child chooses it, you get in the car, you make a big family journey of it, and you go out and you get that thing. Next day you give them the same option as well. This could definitely run up to being more expensive. It doesn't have to be that. You can choose something. It could be going to see grandma. It could be going here, whatever it is that you're doing. You teach that child that when they make that choice, something positive happens and they get that thing that they're requesting. Now, over the period, the parents start to build up a wealth of pictures and resources that they can use with their child to communicate their child's needs. Now the parent is seeing it starting to work. Oh, okay, let's invest in it more. They start taking pictures that you haven't even asked them to take. I had one parent come and show me, like, really excitedly on Zoom, oh, look, this is what I've got him to do. Look, he can request this and this. And the parent was so excited because we had just been doing rice or pasta. And the child one day did rice and swiped chicken as well. And at first we weren't sure whether they really knew it. But when I said, you know, call his bluff, give him rice and fish instead. And the child threw a huge tantrum. And so she gave him the rice and chicken, and he looked at her, and this is her word, she said, you know, he looked at me like I was stupid. Like I told you, I used your method, and you gave me the wrong thing. So, you know, sometimes it's us who's holding our children back. And if we get the parents involved in really being part of the therapy and seeing how it works and seeing that they need to be consistent for their child to make the improvements, it's such an amazing opportunity that we have here to do that. So that's definitely one thing. Building up some resources that the parents can use at home was a huge thing for me, and I'm really happy with where my online clients are now, because the parents feel much more able to continue the therapy at home while we do other things at school. I think the last point is, what if you have a child that you're trying all sorts of things with and nothing seems to be working? It's not happening at home, it's not happening, you know, the child is not responding, the child is not engaging, the child is not doing anything at all, really. You know, the whole session is spent trying to chase a child and put him in a chair, and he's just not having it, or she's not having it. Well, we have to be realistic. It's not just about making a child do things. Sometimes as part of our therapy, we're changing the environment. We're not just changing the way the child behaves. So you can use that time to educate the parents. You can use that time to make changes to the environment that make the child's life more structured, make things more organized, make things more predictable for the child, so that they are in a happier, calmer place to be able to learn. Sometimes we might need to bring other children in and just let the child observe. We know that children learn from children more than they learn from adults at certain ages. So when a child is at home, perhaps this child may be an only child, perhaps they have other children there. Base your therapy around the other children that you have to hand, whether it's their siblings. Get their siblings to do an activity. It could be a building activity, it could be shape sorting, something very, very basic. If you're working on the concept of colors, for example, you could get a parent to get Lego bricks everywhere and get all the siblings to sort them out into things. And every time they pick up a Lego brick that's the right color, they say it and they put it in the right one. Even though the child is not engaged in the activity or doing it, they're watching it, they're taking it in, they're absorbing the language that's being used. And so we can use that as a mimic to the school environment, where children are learning from other children doing things. They're having models with the other children, and they're improving their skills that way. So there's lots of ways that we can look at it a bit flexibly. Don't give up if things are not going well. And, you know, if you need, sometimes two heads are better than one. What I sometimes would do is call a colleague and say, watch my session, please. Tell me where I can do something differently, or can you see areas that we can help develop this child's language or social skills or whatever it is that you're working on. Sometimes having a second or a fresh set of eyes can be really helpful, and, you know, those are the things that I would encourage. So, you know, train the parents, make sure that the foundational skills are there, work on building up resources at home and a schedule and a home program, and then looking at creative ways of modifying the child's environment or helping the child to learn from the example of others around them if they're not engaged in the activities themselves.
My God, that was like a mini lecture there, you know. I know you couldn't go to town on so much, but one of the things that we'll take away is actually doing more parent-driven targets. That's huge, you know, because that way you have a buy-in from the parents, and the frustration of sometimes, you know, having to get the child to sit in the chair when they're running off, and all the things that go on during a session, they can actually follow through, word that we used, till the end of the session. So thank you so much for that. We have one last question from Facebook, and thank you so much for everyone joining us from Facebook and all the other social media platforms. We're so excited that you could do this. The question says, how do you expand a child's language to become more functional and spontaneous? I think spontaneous this is huge. Every parent that you talk to that has a child with special needs, or it's autism or whatever it is, one thing they tell you is, I just want to be able to talk to my child. I would like to have a conversation. So I think this question has to do with functionality and being spontaneous. And this will be our last question at this time. Thank you so much for all the questions.
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. how to make a child's language more functional. And by functional, I assume that you mean that they're using the language in a meaningful way to do things that improve their life, your life, express their needs, wants, feelings, or are appropriate to the situation that they're in. So with functional language, I think sometimes we as therapists can teach language in a way that is not as functional as it needs to be. And I think we as the adults or as the therapists around need to be quite careful about whether our target is for them to be able to say things or for them to be able to use language. And sometimes we're so focused on, oh, they need to be able to speak more, they need to say more, they need to say more. But what's the point of having language that they don't really know how to use well? A lot of children that I work with have a lot of language that they can echo, repeat, sometimes say in context. But when you think, well, if they can say, good morning, everyone, how are you? But they don't greet someone or they don't say hello or bye when it's appropriate, what's the point? I'm not saying don't teach them the language, don't teach them sentences, don't let them pick up on those, they will. But we need to look at teaching them to say things in context and functionally, and rewarding them when they say things functionally. So perhaps you may want your child to tell you about their day, or to describe things when they get hurt, or to make a choice and let you know why they're crying or why they're frustrated. That's functional language. It has a real meaningful effect. If you teach the vocabulary around it first, that's important. But before a child, like if we think of a typically developing baby, before they can say, I don't want it, they'll push things away. And your child probably can do those things. But now we get to the point of sign-assisted speech, which is something that a lot of parents fight me with at the beginning because they feel like I'm substituting language for signing or for pictures or whatever it is that they're worried about. It's not. It's structuring the child's language so that instead of them repeating a whole sentence, or, you know, I see lots of children who will say, you know, good afternoon, auntie, how are you? Or you ask them, what is your name? What is your name? My name is, and it's very rote, very learned, but you know that they can't put that sentence together. With sign-assisted speech, or sometimes colorful semantics, or some sort of picture-based activity, what we're doing is we're linking the words that your child knows to the meaning behind the words. I don't know, my mum might be watching this, and I don't know whether I should use this example or not. Let me just say, some people will sing along to songs and we'll hear them make up a completely new sentence that's not really the lyrics of the song, but they'll sing it in tune and you'll know what they're trying to say. That's very similar to the experience that some of our children have, where they're using language. It sounds right, it's the right words, it's in the right context, but they don't know what the exact words mean. They couldn't break that sentence down or say it in another way or say it in their own words. They couldn't, because they've learned it as a chunk, and that's all it is to them, a chunk that is used appropriately in this situation. So for us, what we need to do is start to break that chunk of sounds down into meaningful words. So some children, if they're quite good with sight reading, you can write the word out and you can start to split it. So I'll share my board. If your child is able to say something like, I want jollof rice, okay? And maybe your child, to begin with, says, I want jollof rice. After you say to him, do you want jollof rice? Do you want amala? What do you want? I want jollof rice, and he just repeats, I want jollof rice. Well, that's not a sentence he's made. Yes, he can say it, but it's not a sentence he's made, and it's not a sentence he can create. So now we need to split it into two chunks that he can understand. I want, and the thing that he wants. So you now have a visual, I want, and that could either be a written visual like we have here. It could be a gesture. So I'll step back a little bit, but if I'm gesturing I want, it's I want. That's how you sign it. I want. Now, every time I was working with a child, even though this child may be able to speak in full sentences, I would still say, I want. What it's doing is it's creating the visual that's going to link the child's understanding to the visual, to a concrete thing that can prompt them. So now we've got I want. You either show them the picture of I want if they can read, or you do the visual, I want. Now, jollof rice. They know the word for jollof rice. If they can name it, that's great. So what you can do is you can have the option of jollof rice. You can either have a picture of jollof rice or the word jollof rice written down, and you can have pounded yam and okra. Now, here, you either have the picture of it, if the child is at the medium, intermediate level. You can have the actual plates of it. That's the objects of reference level where they just need to see the actual thing or something that symbolizes what they're requesting. So a plate of jollof rice and a plate of okra and pounded yam. Or you can have the sign for it if they're more visual or they understand the sign. And with all of this, obviously I'm showing you that you need to have been using the visuals before you're putting them together in the sentence. So this is not for just the non-verbal children. This is for the children who are creating sentences, speaking in sentences, but you know that they cannot describe something. You know that they cannot tell you a story. You know that they cannot say their wants when they need to because they haven't learnt the building blocks of how to put together this and this. All they know is this as one chunk. They do not know how to separate them into their bits. If they can separate that phrase into its two components, now they can begin to swap it with other things. Now I want suya. I want ice cream. They know that that part of the sentence can be removed and functionally swapped with the thing that they want. So we need to test all the language that they have. Can they be flexible with the sentences that they have? If not, let's break it down into the parts. Let's use the visuals, either written down or use a sign and sign it on so that they can see which ones stay together and which ones are the moving parts to explain what they want. And that's how you start to have a child who is using language functionally. So what does it look like? Okay, imagine I am the parent and you're in front of me, you are the child. So I'll say, I want, at the early stages, I'm going to show you jollof rice, the plate of jollof rice, pounded yam and okra. And I'll say, I want jollof rice, pounded yam. I want jollof rice, pounded yam. Now, your child can say it and repeat it, that's fine. What we want is them to understand that I want is the beginning and jollof rice is the second part. Okay, now they do that. Now they know I want jollof rice, okra, and pounded yam. Now I'm not going to say it. So when they're in front of me in the kitchen and I have two plates, I'm just going to go to them and I'm going to expect that after a while of me doing it consistently, and this will only work if you're consistent, they will now say, I want here. When they see me doing this, I want. Then I'll show them. Now this is a child who already is able to say jollof rice, is able to say okra. And so now all I'm doing is telling them the order in which they speak. And they pick the one that they want. So they would say, I want jollof rice. And they would say it. Then we now start to extend it to other things. So maybe they are having a tantrum. And, you know, obviously it's not best to do it when they're upset. We teach it along, but I'm giving you an example of, let's say they're having a tantrum because they're in the car and you're taking them home, but they want to go back to Auntie's house where they've been having so much fun. Then you look at them, you settle them, you make sure they're looking at you, and you go, so now they're cued. They've been saying it all day, every day. They've been practicing it. They know what this means. I want. You're teaching them, tell me what you want. They understand that what comes next is two choices. Mommy, I want to go home. I want to go to Auntie's house. I want to go home. I want to go to Auntie's house. That's how you start to teach functional language with a child that has language, but is not using it. Okay, so then we were talking, please, can you remind me, what was the second part of the question?
After functional and spontaneous. So the second thing is
spontaneous language. Spontaneous is really tricky. When you've got part of the profile of children on the spectrum is that they are less inclined to share social moments with others. So we know that language is used in lots of different ways: to inform, to request, to obtain, to negate or say no to. But it's also used to socially interact. And with that social interaction, it's your child who goes, oh, look, Mummy, who wants you to be part of it, or talks about their day. And that part of their language profile is much harder for a child on the spectrum, because if we look at their nature, they're less inclined to share things socially if there is of no benefit, if it's of no benefit to them. If it's not cause and effect, what's the point of me sharing with you, that's a nice butterfly? What does that matter to you? Because the children are a lot more egocentric in their thoughts and thinking and the way they interact. And it's about what brings them joy. Telling you that that's a lovely vase of flowers does nothing for them. So we need to make things much more rewarding for them when they talk to us, when they make comments on things that we want to encourage more of. Like, you know, I had one parent talk to me about the day that he was the most proud of his son was when, and he's a big football fan, he was watching a match, I can't remember which one it was, but his team scored and his son walked past the TV and went, a goal! And the father said, you know, for him, that was it. It was the best thing that he'd heard, that his son was able to just share that moment or comment on something just like that and share it with him, even though it wasn't really important to the son. Son doesn't like football, but saw it and shared it with his father. So those sorts of moments we want to encourage and celebrate, but we need to teach children. We need to teach them to share it. How is your child going to be spontaneous with their language if they don't see you being spontaneous with your language? How many of us walk around as adults narrating our day the way that we want our children to? Oh, look, Mummy, you know, young children will do it all day, every day, and that's how they practice social interaction. They'll say, you know, oh, look, Mummy, it's a butterfly. I'm going to draw this now. And now, oh, what's under here? And they'll talk to themselves. They'll talk to whoever's in the room. They'll describe everything that they're doing. It's just like a verbal onslaught of all the things that they are thinking and doing. And it's the typically developing pattern. Now we have children that are not developing typically, and we talked about it earlier, the explicit teaching. Some of that is through them watching us. If we're in the kitchen cooking, cleaning, doing all the things that we're doing, but we're doing it silently, how are they going to learn how to be spontaneous in their language if we're not? If you're in the kitchen and your child is watching you, right, now I'm chopping the peppers. Now I'm doing this. Now Mummy's going to get this. Oh, who's that at the door? Oh, there's my phone. Where's my phone? You talk through verbally narrating your day all day so that the child can see these are things that I can do. And the child will eventually start to imitate and mimic what they see. If you're doing it all the time, then you provide lots of opportunities for your child to pick up on that spontaneous vocabulary and to learn it. It may not be as spontaneous at the beginning, but as their language systems grow, as they start to understand what's appropriate to say and what's not, then you'll start to hear more spontaneous language. Have other children around playing with them and giving them those models. Pick children that are a little bit younger and at that very verbal narrating stage to be and to act as the models for your child. And then you'll start to see that sort of development when they see and they mimic other children's play. And most of all, we need to reward the behaviors that we want if we want them to continue. So every time, the child makes a comment, we don't want to scare them or put them off, because some parents report, their child said a word, they celebrated and cheered and they never heard it again. The child was just a bit overwhelmed by what happened. I'm not doing that again. I don't want that response. But instead, what we need to do is think about things that will reward our child in a calm way. So maybe if the child says something while they're playing, says a word, we blow some bubbles. Let them play again, let them play again. When they say the word spontaneously or show you or say, look, blow some more bubbles. That's rewarding them if they like bubbles, or, give them a little tickle, or whatever it is that your child would respond well to. We want to reward the behavior in that moment so that they see that when I do this, I get something I like. Yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. We have been so informed, so educated, and some of these tips are so easy and practical to put to do at home. Some of them we need help. Please don't forget to reach out to the Ziba Foundation, if you need any clarification or if you need any help with any of this. Thank you so much, Ms. Tommy. Thank you so much, IT crew. Thank you so much, audience. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been amazing. All your questions have been great. Thank you to the management and the board of directors of the Ziba Foundation. It brings us to pretty much the end of the second session of our webinar series as we celebrate our first year anniversary. Don't forget, next Saturday, same time, we will be having the same thing. And please feel free to look at our ad right now as it rolls to give you some more information. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.